Well, it being 12:30, I think we'll go ahead and start the meeting, and we are now underway. Without saying it, but the flag is in the house. And I'd like to welcome everybody, and Letitia, welcome to you.
Thank you.
Lane, welcome to you. Glad to have you join us again.
Glad to be with you.
And all Rotarians. And so we'll start the meeting with our four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. First,
is it the truth?
Second,
is it fair to all concerned?
Third, will it
Build goodwill and better friendships.
And fourth,
Will be beneficial
To all concerned.
all right, we're getting there. We're gonna be in sync pretty soon. As far as our Rotary moment goes, it's been kind of interesting, the few forays that I've made out into the community to see something that, you know, Rotarians are all used to serving other people and service above self. It's interesting as you go out in the community, I've certainly seen it, people reaching out to help other people. And it's kind of gratifying. And it's the kind of thing when you see it, I hope it's something that people will remember and continue to do in the future when we come out of wherever we're going to come out of. That we'll be better people and be better prepared to serve each other in a kinder, gentler way. So that's my Rotary moment for today. I've already welcomed all the folks here. Do we have any announcements? Richard, do you have any things to announce?
Yeah, things are on hold.
The world's on hold.
The world is on hold.
Well, I can announce that the Ticket Tailor, the company that we use to manage our tickets, gave us either a 2 or 3 month credit for our ticket sales, and I've currently suspended ticket sales until I'm going to turn them back on July 1st, because I figured there's no point in having to paying for the ticket platform while we're not selling anything anyway.
Wonderful.
Okay. Any other announcements today?
Nope.
Well, let's go right into our guest speaker today, Letitia Clark from the city of Tustin, who kind of share with us what's going on in the city and how it's being impacted and what the future might look for us. Letitia, it's all yours.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you all for having me. It's really encouraging to see all you here and active, and everyone looks healthy and well. So that's very encouraging to see. You know, from the city perspective, we've been working hard to continue to provide essential services, but we're in uncharted territory here. So we are doing our best to comply and keep up to date with the state and county orders and guidelines. Outside of what the county and the state has done, early on, we reaffirmed the halt on evictions and foreclosures to try to protect some of our local residents from experiencing evictions or foreclosures during this time. Of course, that's not a forgiveness of rent or mortgage payments, but just a pause on it, especially those who have been, or particularly those who have been impacted with job loss from COVID-19. And so we have received a lot of resident inquiries about how they can, landlords about preventing eviction. We've seen a lot of tenants receive communications about just vacating premises on their own. And so we're trying to inform them that they do have rights to remain in their apartments or homes until 90 days after the stay-at-home order is complete. And that's through the governor. So the Fair Housing Foundation is one group that we've worked with, and they can help advocate on behalf of tenants. So whether you all know anyone who's experiencing some hardships and needs some advocacy, the Fair Housing Foundation has been a great resource. Or if you are a landlord and need help in being able to communicate with tenants who are experiencing hardships, we can help direct you to resources as well. In addition to that, the only other more stringent order that we carried out, in addition to the county and state, was really prohibiting activity in our parks. We didn't close our parks completely. We still allowed passive use, and then just on Tuesday, we're allowing for a few more uses, and that's kind of in congruence with the governor's phase 2 approach that he'll be announcing today or tomorrow, about kind of slowly reopening the state. So now in our parks, not only can you bike and walk, but you can have picnics with your immediate family or anyone in your immediate household, play catch, just a couple more things that you can do in the park so that people can protect their mental health and get outside. The playgrounds are still closed, and the facilities in the park are still closed in all the parks. We're talking about opening up the parking lots at some point, possibly for those residents that may not be in walking distance to some of our parks. So we recognize there's some inequities there. In case they need to drive to our parks, we want to make that available. Outside of that, we did approve funding, additional funding for CDBG. And for those that don't know what that is, it's Community Development Block Grant funding that comes from the federal government. We already have recipients that receive those funds, and it's just to do great work in the community. A lot of our nonprofits receive those funds. We've received $300,000 for those recipients, specifically to the work that they're doing related to COVID-19. And then we expect to receive about $500,000 to help small businesses and maybe even nonprofits as well. So we're trying to talk about what that application process will look like. We would much rather give out grants than loans. And so we need input from people like you all who could give us some input about what those amounts should look like, what an application process should look like. We want it to be accessible and easy, but we want the funds and the amount to be meaningful. So hearing from you all about, what that process should look like will be helpful. And then I will just say that the governor announced today that we're experiencing or expected to experience a $53 billion deficit in the state. Cities, according to the League of Cities, expect to experience about a $7 billion deficit statewide. And we don't know the numbers exactly for Tustin yet, but we know we're going to be hurting. And luckily, we've had a council and a staff that have been very proactive in saving. And so we have more than 20% in reserves. And so we feel like we'll be in a better position than a lot of cities, but we're going to have to think creatively and be really flexible about how we carry out all the services that are essential, but then also really support our nonprofits and our small business community, because they will definitely be hurting after all this is said and done. One last plug I'll make before we do a little Q&A is for the census. Right now, we have about 67% of the community that have responded to the census. And these are just funds that we expect to get based on our population size. And of course, the census is only every 10 years. So we know that our population has increased since then, and funding is directly tied to our census numbers. So if you haven't taken the census yet, please do so. It takes about 5 to 10 minutes. It's really easy, but we really want everyone to be counted. And with everything going on, something like the census feels like it's very low on the totem pole, but we want to still encourage that because it means additional funding community. And then right before we started, a couple folks asked about major events. You may have heard that Chili Cook-Off is canceled. At this point, it's usually in June and draws about 30,000 folks. So, needless to say, we won't be able to have an event of that magnitude, but they are talking about holding a virtual chili cook-off, chili tasting. I don't know how we'll do that, but they're working it out. So plan to participate in that way. And then we're still waiting to hear about news if concerts in the park will be canceled, if Broadway in the park will be canceled. At this point, we're still planning for Tiller Days. That's usually held in October. So we're crossing our fingers that we'll be able to have Tiller Days, even if it's in a modified way, where we, are able to crowd control in some ways, but we're crossing our fingers that Tiller Days can still happen. So we are doing our best to adjust with the times, but know that we are looking to leaders like you all for input and guidance about what the needs are out there. or ways that we can support our community in a much more engaging way, we're looking to hear from you. One thing I would also encourage, we're still meeting, the city council's meeting just like you via Zoom. Please submit comments or tune in when you can. I know we don't receive that much attendance anyway in person unless there's really a controversial issue. So people remain engaged because we are still meeting. And it's important that what decisions we're making, we have public input and we receive that well-needed dialogue between the public. So I encourage you to stay engaged online. But that's all I have. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask away. Yeah, the Andersons. Oh, you might have to unmute yourself.
We're not hearing you.
Trying to, okay. With the early release of prisoners, and there were some nefarious characters that had been released, are you seeing any increase in crime during this COVID-19 problem?
Good question. Actually, the numbers for calls and emergencies has decreased over time. I know we were paying special attention. The chief had warned us about maybe increase to domestic violence and other crimes that could be committed in the home because people are just on top of each other during this time. But some of those calls have actually decreased. But we are trying to ensure that our police department have all of the availability and the opportunity to address crime in the community wherever it peaks its head, because for a couple of weeks, they were actually doing some enforcement work as it pertained to social distancing, as it pertained to people in our parks, or they'd have to go to grocery stores because we were hearing from local residents that they see people convening in the parks or people are standing too close in the grocery stores. And so they were responding to some of those calls, but those calls have decreased. And now that a little bit of the guidance has been loosened, we are really encouraging them to focus on just monitoring our city the way that they always have. And it's less encouragement to be on the enforcement side of COVID-19 related issues. So to answer your question, not seeing crime, expecting some issues related to maybe, domestic violence and other things directly related to COVID-19, but that has been on the decrease.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a question, Letitia, back to finances.
Mm-hmm.
The Kiplinger letter, which I still take from Washington, suggests that a lot of cities are going to have to furlough some of their staff. And I know Tustin has always been very fiscally astute, but it's got to be a huge hit with all the stores closed, with the auto center pretty dead. A lot of revenue is going to drop off. So at this point, you're hoping it'll start to turn around before it gets too
better habit.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. We don't have exact numbers yet, but we are anticipated that we'll have a loss of revenue. And some deals that we kind of were anticipating have the potential to fall through. Although we don't want to talk about furloughing or laying off, it's something that we are assessing. And in the coming weeks, we're going to have to take a really hard look at all of our staffing, all of our positions. One thing that I have noticed that the city manager has already done is talking about transitioning, like for instance, some of our part-time workers in Parks and Recreation. We don't have any activities or classes going on in Parks and Rec, but we're talking about how do we readjust some of these employees so that they're addressing to COVID-19. So for instance, there were talks about putting some of those employees in the parks to kind of monitor behavior instead of our police. They could be in the parks to just remind people, we're still encouraging social distancing. These activities are permissive. These activities aren't. So we might be doing a lot of that, readjusting staff to address our needs now. But yeah, I mean, the last thing we want to do is furlough or lay off, but we are having those tough conversations and we're not exempt from having those conversations. So I think we're trying to be realistic, but creative and flexible where we can.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think Gary and I think Jonathan, you have a question too, but want to go ahead?
So I got a couple things. One is that I do have a couple of tenants, not in the city of Tustin, but
Okay.
two tenants in, I do have a tenant in Tustin, but I don't have any problem with a tenant. I have two tenants in Santa Ana who both seem to be under the impression that they don't have to pay rent, and they don't have to pay rent. And it's not related to the COVID-19. They just think they don't have to pay rent because they're listening to all the rhetoric that they hear on various social media that thinks that there's a big rent strike. Well, I had a very good conversation with them last month that ended up in them paying the rent, because I told them that, well, if you don't pay it, yes, you're not going to get evicted, but you're still going to owe the rent at some point. Mm-hmm. And in their case, it wasn't that they couldn't pay the rent, that they weren't having income, because both tenants did. They lived side by side. It was a case where they think that things are to their advantage right now, so they just don't want to pay the rent. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's anything the city can do, but it seems that social media is kind of overwhelmed by this stuff that's going on, maybe in the East or in other jurisdictions, that there's sort of this anti-landlord movement, it seems like, and probably Carl can attest to some of that as well. But it seems that there's people are under the false impression that that means they don't have to pay rent, and it's going to be forgiven.
Right. Well, yeah, that's a good point. I mean, communication is huge right now. Just the misconceptions that are out there is enormous. And I think we do have some information on our city website, but I can advocate for it to be more prevalent and to make it clear that if you are, trying to work with your landlord right now because you've been impacted by COVID-19, you still have to demonstrate that there is a need, that you've had job loss related to COVID-19. There are still some documenting procedures that are in place and that require them to not only prove why they can't pay rent, but that there's an agreement of how they're going to pay rent after the order is complete. And like you said, it's not a forgiveness of rent. It may just be a deferral. And so how they make those payments at a later point is needs to be really clear. I think the communication with the landlord is the most important thing. And so I agree with you. The misconceptions out there are huge, and we can definitely do some more at the city level to make that point clear, that it's not a forgiveness and it's not a free for all during this time.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm afraid of. So the second thing I have was that I did notice that we went out this weekend to go use the parks. Okay. And there's no parking, of course, at the parks, and there's only the sports park because there's street parking, and Pepper Tree Park because there's street parking. But but virtually every parking lot is blocked off. Did I get from your previous comments that they're going to open the parking lots again pretty soon? Is that?
It's one thing I brought up on Tuesday. For exactly that concern, is that we can open all the parks, but or at least allow a couple more uses. But if people can't get to the parks, if you don't live in walking distance to a park, then you really can't take advantage of using our parks. So I think that's something that's going to happen really soon, us opening parking lots. And then again, if we transition some staff to at least monitor the social distancing, then I think that we can pretty much monitor to make sure that people are using the parks in a safe way, and we're progressively, opening them up to more uses that's safe for this time. But yeah, I think that's coming really soon, because
why not?
Yeah, why not? We just that's the next step.
Okay.
But hearing from you helps to just reaffirm that that's needed. So thank you.
I just have an observation that I don't know how the city feels about it, but it goes back to some of the misconceptions and information that needs to be corrected that's out there on the street. Mm-hmm. But in Orange County, there does not seem to be a way to get that information out or to get it corrected. We turn on the TVs and we can listen to the governor of New York. We can listen to Mayor Garcetti. We can listen to our own mayor or our own governor.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like an information wasteland in Orange County.
Yeah.
I've heard the comment that we're following LA, and LA County is following Mayor Garcetti. But it feels like we don't know what's going on here.
No, I empathize with you, and we always struggle with this a little bit. It's this basically the media in this area has continued to decline over time. I mean, we saw with the loss of our Tustin News, right, from the OC Register, like all of this media is starting to combine, and we are being lumped into a region with LA and San Diego, and we couldn't be more different than these two metropolises. So it's frustrating. I can tell you, just yesterday, I started following every news reporter on Instagram, just hoping that I can get them information on a kind of one-to-one basis, because we don't seem to be drawing any traction from TV reporters. I know our mayor, Mayor Bernstein, he's had to shoot his own videos and kind of post them on our website and social media, because we are not getting the coverage that I think this area of 3 million people deserve. And we're, like you said, we're being lumped into LA, and I mean, even San Bernardino and Riverside County probably get more coverage than we do. And so it is frustrating on this end. Unfortunately, I don't really have a solution other than us just being stronger with our local media efforts. And that means populating our own social media, going on, the neighborhood apps and things like that. So I would encourage you to follow local groups on social media if you are on social media. But the days of us getting a lot of coverage on the evening news, I just don't see that happening anytime soon, unfortunately, unless there's something really bad that's happening in the area, which.
Well, I just think it would be nice if we could, collectively petition the news outlets,
Mm-hmm.
local news channels on, CBS, ABC, NBC,
Yeah.
just for a 2 or 3 or maybe 4 minute
Mm-hmm.
update
Mm-hmm.
as a, from one of the supervisors.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
so information is coming from the top for residents of Orange County to know where we're going and how we're going to get there. If it's different, if it's the same, say it's the same, but a way to inform us all as to what's going on so we know what to look forward to.
That's a great point. I mean, I never underestimate the power of grassroots organizing, just getting together and emailing and writing letters to the news stations and then asking our supervisors to do the same. I still see value in that. And I see change happening every day just from people banding together and being a stronger voice. So yeah, if we can get that organized, I'd be all for it.
We do have some local groups, like on social media, Facebook in particular, that it wouldn't hurt for the city to communicate either in those groups or on the city's own social media on a more regular basis, because a lot of us, at least in our club and area, do follow the city on social media, but there has not been a lot of communication, and I think this is more to Dick's point is that. I think the failure is on who's going to speak here next week, which is Don Wagner. Has been that there's been a lack of communication. I know he got some press in the last couple of days on a national level, but in general, we don't, like Dick said, we don't get a lot of localized information as to what's going on, other than the beaches closing.
No, it's a good point. Yeah. I'll take that back. And if you guys are following the city's website and we need to post every day or a couple times a day, I mean, I can definitely encourage that. And then even for like my own social media, just trying to do a live Facebook resource fair, on pretty much a weekly basis, just to your point, trying to get out to different channels and different audiences as much as possible. So yeah, this is all good feedback. Thank you.
Hi, Letitia.
Jonathan, hey.
Hey, Mayor Pro Tem.
Irvine is they're going to test, provide tests to all of their residents.
Okay.
Tustin thinking about doing anything like that?
I need to check with Irvine, but I think Carson was one of the first cities to announce that they were going to do citywide testing. It would be free. They worked with a company to do that. So I'm not sure if the tests were, FDA approved, et cetera, but some cities are working with specific companies to offer testing. And I don't know how Irvine's doing that, but yeah, if we can get access to testing and then have the reassurance that it's safe and reliable, then yeah, we definitely want to move in that direction, because the testing component of us moving into the next phases of opening is critical. So to answer your question in short, yes, we are looking at it. Best we're able to offer citywide is still in the works, up in the air.
Are we testing any city employees? Like, are we testing the council? I mean,
not yet, not that I know of. If we do have access to testing, it's through the county. So, but I don't know of any city kind of base testing that we have that's being sponsored by the city. And then, as you know, the council, we're not interacting with each other. We're not going to City Hall for any meetings. So we haven't been tested in that capacity, like from the city level. But I think it's coming, and it's so vital that we expand the testing. But we have done some advocating for increased testing across the region. But now that cities are taking it upon themselves to test their residents, I think that's something we're moving towards.
how do you think that'll come into play with what the governor said yesterday about workers' comp?
Yeah, I don't know, because like we were just talking about the economic issue. I mean, we're already nervous about our budget, and if we have to continue to pay employees, but they're not going to be physically working or they can't provide certain services, we're just kind of trying to pay attention to all of the new policies and regulations in place, but make plans.
Is the city self-insured?
I'll have to check on that, Jonathan. I'll have to check. I'll follow back up with you.
And thanks for keeping the Tustin beaches open.
Yes. We love our inner coast, huh? Anderson, do you guys have one more question?
I do. With this full discussion that we've had about communications,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's incumbent upon our supervisors to coordinate for Orange County. So it isn't independent entities of all the cities deciding, okay, we'll test and so will not test. I know you're all concerned about cash flow and the economic fallout on this for our city and employees. That's the same pain that small business is having, and they need more guidance for reopening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's supposed to be happening in the near future.
Yeah.
Can you help us by doing any communication with the Board of Supervisors?
Specifically for small businesses?
Well, just what some of the guidelines are going to be testing throughout the county for COVID, what stage that's in, and let me throw out restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
That's a big question mark in terms of all the requirements that they're going to have to follow through with in order to open. John probably could address that more effectively.
Mm-hmm.
But unless they open, there's no revenue that will flow downstream to the city.
Right. And even if they're able to open, and what we've heard is, being able to open at 25% capacity, I mean, that's still not, that's still taking a big hit for everyone across the board. So yeah, I can definitely advocate along with my colleagues for more information from the Board of Supervisors, as much advance notice of some of these phases and what they'll look like. And I think you all make a great point. We just want as much information as possible And it just has to continue to trickle down, even if everything's not set in stone. We want to know what's even being discussed, so we can just kind of have a good idea of what's to come. And then in these times, the more communication. So, you know, we can definitely.
I have a question.
Cindy's got a question, Letitia.
Will self-certification for moving along to further phases or further along in phase 2, is that accomplished first through the city, or do you go straight to the county supervisor, or how is that? Do you know? Or maybe you have to listen to Gavin's speech first. I don't know.
For businesses to open?
For business, yeah, for qualifications, requirements, all of that.
You know what? I'm not sure, but I'm guessing that will probably be at a city level first. And we might be able to just work out some kind of program, and hopefully regionally and across the county, we're all doing the same type of certification process, so that that's streamlined and the messaging is consistent there. But my hope is that it's as accessible and easy as possible. And we're really just going to be trusting each business to do all that they can to keep yourselves safe and your patrons as safe as possible. But there's no way that we'll be able to send, you know, a code enforcement officer to every business to ensure that they're doing everything they need to do in order to open. But I'm sure there will just be a checklist and a guideline. And if there's questions, then the city can be a resource. Okay. That's what I'm hoping. But it's a good point and something we can advocate for to make sure that it's streamlined across the county.
Okay, thank you.
So we're not planning on arresting any people that are barbers, you know, doing haircuts or anything like that.
That's never the goal, you know.
Okay.
I don't think that's
Good. You worried about your barber getting arrested, Gary?
No, I'm just thinking, you know, Johnny can probably start doing his swim lessons again now.
Well, yeah, it's no problem holding a 18-month-old from 6 feet away.
Yeah, there's a lot involved, you know.
Yeah,
the
I suppose.
and so many things. So we're just trying to figure out at what point it makes sense that it's not so cumbersome and everything to actually.
Yeah, we're trying to work with. There's a coalition of 40 swim schools in California that have been petitioning the governor. Katie Porter's been very passionate about helping her kids learn at one of our schools down in South County. And we're trying to at least be considered for the second stage and then follow all the protocols. But again, we have such a unique environment. You know, we're wondering how much the chlorinated water, you know, is a benefit versus the sunshine when we're outdoors. But the social distancing and all that. So we'll be looking for you for guidance.
Okay, yeah, and I can probably assume that you all may have to provide, you know, PPE to your.
Oh, for sure. We've already purchased masks and
face shields.
Right.
Trying to think of everything we might need, and then
exactly. Yeah, I think that's
ultraviolet wands.
A lot of time on that.
But I got my Johnny sticker, so I'm ready to go.
Well prepared. Well prepared.
Thanks.
Sure.
Okay. There were the other questions.
One more question.
I see Greg.
Lori's got one.
Go ahead. Greg, did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, we're proud of our tellers. Thanks for your.
Right.
Hey, the governor talks about in the stages having a number of people who can track, and he has a different word for it, but people basically who find infected and then track their contacts. Is the city playing any role in identifying or hiring kind of folks, or who does that?
Yeah, I mean, I would think they're done through the health officers, which is led at the county level. And so, but if we have an opportunity, if there are hiring, you know, positions available, and then we get to a point where we have to lay off or furlough some of our part-time workers, that might be an opportunity for them to do some work that's impactful, like kind of keeps them in the public realm, you know, for months to come. But I haven't heard about anything that would be localized in terms of city by city for the tracking of cases and those who've been in contact with those. Yeah, good.
Lori, you had a question?
Yes. Letitia, on masks and regulations of wearing masks, as more businesses open up, is that just each business has they regulate, or will the city or somewhere regulate that we have to wear a mask when we go in? Like, as you know, it's a lot will be probably a lot of, making reservations to go, appointments to go into stores. I don't know how restaurants are going to do that. That's a whole thing. You're saying you're opening parks. If there'll be more, 6 feet is just an arbitrary number of distance as people are walking. Are masks going to be required? Like Costco, requires masks. We've been into other stores that people are not wearing them. I don't know if it's for health reasons, people with asthma, I know, it's difficult, but is there any talk about?
So great question. We just addressed this just a couple weeks ago. It was on the council agenda. Right now, the county and the state is requiring that everyone working at essential businesses has to wear masks. So, the employees are required to wear masks. And then it's jurisdiction by jurisdiction can require the public to wear masks when out in public. We had this on the agenda and it was voted down. So Dr. Bernstein and I voted for it, and the other council members didn't vote for it. I think it would be extremely important to require that at least for the next few weeks, as we're trying to move into these stages. But so if you see stores and restaurants requiring it, it's because they have required on their own that the public wear masks before coming into their establishment. You go to Irvine, they have something on the books that will present a fine if the public is not wearing a mask in certain establishments. If you go to LA, you have to wear a mask when going into certain businesses. So at this point, Tustin does not have that on the books. You will not be required to wear, you won't get a fine if you're not wearing a mask out and about. But just from my perspective as someone sitting on the city council, I'm going to highly, highly encourage it. And if you have the ability to wear a mask, please do so. It's just another preventative measure, just like social distancing. But are we arresting people for not wearing masks? Absolutely not. Are we arresting you for not social distancing? Absolutely not. It's just all we can do is encourage it. And so we're hoping, and we have seen a lot of Tustinites just step up and be as careful and as safe as they can. And that will continue until we discuss it and move to fix it.
Supermarkets that we've been going to, the 3 supermarkets that we visited, all 3 of them, you can't go in without a mask.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So individual stores are making their decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, John?
He has to mute, take his mute off.
Oh, here.
My perspective is we won't go into a place that doesn't require everybody to have masks. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think so you're saying that the other 3 council people, so if we tried to lobby one of them, then that you might vote on it again, go 3-2 the other way?
Yeah, I think if we hear from the community that this is something they want at the city level, they want this enforced and required. Basically, it's not that our other council members don't think it's important. They just didn't want to require it of each.
I understand.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, if they were encouraged to pass something like this and they think that the community wants this, I could see them changing their minds on this.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Regulation.
Yeah, John, you have a question?
Can you hear me yet?
Yep.
Yes.
I can speak to the restaurant industry a little bit.
You're
No,
muted
you
again.
muted.
Sorry, go ahead.
75% occupancy? Is that what I heard you say?
I've heard 25.
Yes, it is 25.
Yeah, uh-huh.
So what the Black Marlin has done during this down period, besides offer the curbside food for our regular people, we've completely dismantled the entire restaurant and have taken down booths, walls, in an effort to increase our occupancy and have social distancing more ready.
Okay.
We've also built a major addition on the back patio to increase social distancing.
Mm-hmm.
We're forced to, you know, gone are the regular menus. Everything's got to be disposable. We have temperature point and shoot at the door when people enter. We have to do that. Masks for the servers and gloves. We're not quite sure if we're going to enforce people to wear masks. We haven't got to that part yet. But you know, replacing carpet, we've done it all just to try and keep current and take advantage of what we have to take.
Yeah, that's great, John. Just to hear how you're being proactive, anticipating the new normal.
It's the great unknown, and we have to be ready for it. So
Smart.
I'd like to thank you and the entire city council for doing such a great job too.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have?
Letitia, can I say something?
Oh.
I just want to tell you a little bit about, you know, with real estate. Before we can take anybody into a house, we have forms that have to be signed for COVID-19 virus. We also have to have the seller have a signed disclosure also regarding the virus. In order to show property, we're only allowed to have 2 people in the house at the same time. We have to wear gloves and we have to wear a mask. And usually, I don't know if this is required, but most of us will take a wipe of some sort, go through the house, anything that the buyer has touched or whatever, we wipe off all the knobs, the doors they open, that type of thing. So it has gotten to the point where it's very, very difficult to actually show property. We have to ask the seller to leave. This is also for the inspectors. This is also for the termite people. So, you know, everybody that's involved in this is, but I will tell you, they're all doing a very good job. Everybody comes with their mask and puts the seller in the car and moves him out. And, you know, we've got systems going. I think that the Board of Realtors has done a very good job in doing, you know, educating us all on that. So I just wanted to share that with you.
No, thank you for sharing that. I reached out to Dan, I think just last week, just asking how all of you were doing. And he mentioned that you're still busy.
Yeah.
Showing and still selling. So
I actually sold the house.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so it is amazing, but it does take work.
Yeah.
And then, of course, your escrow people, they can't have people come into their offices for signing documents. They have to send a notary out, you know, that is prepared, that can do things at a distance. And I mean, because all of that has to be done in writing. So it's changed our business quite a bit.
Yeah, but I think those who will be successful will, you know, be flexible during this time and anticipate what may be some long-term changes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we've had a couple first-time home buyers back out on things because they're nervous and they just don't know what's going to be happening in the future. So it's an interesting time.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing, Pat. I know Bruce.
Can I ask a question? Are there any statistics on the positive cases in Tustin or fatalities?
Yeah, we don't have the number of deaths, but we do have the number of positive cases. I'm going to look it up real quick. And they do it by city, and they also rank us by positive cases per 10,000 people in the city. So right now we rank 24th out of 34 cities from the last reports that I saw, but let me tell you how many cases. I think we've had a little over 45. Let me check.
Bruce, the Orange County Health Department puts out those statistics every day.
Okay. You can go to ochealthinfo.com.
Right.
Let's break it down by city, but we've had 46 cases to date, and we rank 24 out of the county. So
good.
Comparatively, we're not close to the top 10 at all.
Right.
And given our size, so.
Thank you.
We're doing pretty good.
Okay. Fred, did you have a question?
No.
Relaxing. Do we have any other questions for Letitia?
We're about done. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you very much for
Of
joining
course.
the
Thank you
meeting,
all.
and we appreciate the input. Keep up the good work, and
Thank you.
we all look forward to coming out of hibernation here as soon as possible.
Yes, we'll have to go visit that winery that you guys are.
Does anybody have any other comments before we conclude the meeting? Okay, I will ring the bell and we are officially finished for the meeting. Thank you all very much for coming. Stay healthy and wash your hands.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Everyone.
Thank you, Letitia.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. That was the best.
Mhm.